Are they a developmental program?
I I keep saying this. This is totally deductive reasoning.
That's
and
why the D-line coach is here, apparently.
Hey, man, I'm willing to listen.
Yeah.
I'm willing to listen, and I get it. I can be I can have great emotions without being emotional.
Sure.
But I this whole time I push back on this whole narrative of a philosophical shift. Because while you did plug holes going in the portal,
Sure.
I've said it from day one. Look at the portal profiles of the guys they're bringing in. There's still a developmental component. There's still no finished products. They're still about bringing in competition. There's
Two
still
finished products, but yeah. We landed on 2 yesterday. Spindler and Key as finished, ready-made. But you're right. The rest of the class?
Right.
Yeah.
So I still think he's not willing to part with his philosophy of playing the long game.
So let me ask you this, because let's do some deductive reasoning here, right?
I am going to listen to you.
So Nebraska, do you think Nebraska is consistently going to be able to recruit 4 or 5-star guys out of high school or 4 or 5-star guys out of the portal? Like the top end ready-made guys. Is Nebraska consistently going to be able to recruit those guys? Either way.
What's the number? A guy or two?
No, I mean like that's the majority of their team.
No, because that's not who they – no.
Okay, so if the answer to that is no, what's the only option left?
To develop.
To be a developmental program, right? So like I don't know that it's that.
I'm just trying to figure out where it came from.
I think it's the difference between how Coach Rule talked about the portal last year, the year before.
I said yesterday, I think we think he's saying something different than he is.
Right. I think it's mostly just the number of guys. It was a large portal class this year comparatively to last year's.
Surprised to hear. I don't know if we have it.
I got 16 this year?
Yep. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Shane, did we cut up the individual clip of Coach Addison talking about the DB room? I'm looking now.
You're looking live.
You are looking live. There are 2 group chats. So let me say this while we search for it. He said, yeah, there are a lot of young guys in this room where I feel good about the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound ready-made to you?
No.
Sound developmental?
Yeah.
I think we missed the mark. I do. And the more I listen to it, started with Coach Simpson a couple weeks ago, talking about the staff. I think we got enough veteran guys. I think we got young, hungry guys. I think we have a nice combination. I still think – what did we hear yesterday from 2 of the 3 coaches about hiring teachers?
Yeah. It's one of the first things he said.
And then he talked about playing young guys. Like they're giving you the answers to the test without us having to panic.
Yeah. I mean, if Nebraska's going to be successful, and I think this is
well, I just want to know like where we kind of developed this narrative over the last month and a half of them moving off of the vision.
Yeah, I literally just
and I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's not like, well, hey, I'm gonna fight you. I'm just 888-638-4876.
I think it's 2 things.
Well, holler at your boy.
I think it's numbers. Number 1, cutting down the roster size. I think people assumed if you're cutting down the roster from 140 to 105, you're not going to be able to take flyers on guys, which is what we felt like he was doing in the first couple of years, which I think he wouldn't call it that probably, but taking some developmental prospects that you didn't really know how it was going to turn out. That's what I call a flyer. He probably calls it something else. But I think that's part of it where you think, hey, with 30, 40, 50 fewer guys, you probably can't take some of those. Mm-hmm. I think that's number 1. Number 2, I do think it's just the sheer number and aggressiveness they were in the portal this year.
Is it a lot?
It's almost twice as much as last year. I mean, it's 9 to 16. Like and one of those was Mac Markway, who just kind of showed up, right? So it's not like that was a guy that they went out of their way to get. He just kind of showed up at Nebraska.
2 special teams guys.
Yeah, 2 specialists.
You were mad that we needed to get better.
No, I'm not mad about.
I'm not you.
No,
as in you.
The Royal We.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that's a show?
The Royal We?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a show.
No, I get what you're saying, and I do think.
So you're down to 13.
I do think 2 things can be true at once. You can plug holes in the portal.
You're down to 13.
Yeah.
I think we jumped the gun.
I think you can plug holes in the portal and still be a developmental program. Because here's the thing, you're going to miss on some guys, and with a smaller roster, you're going to have to fill those gaps through other means, right? Because you're not going to be able.
You just have to be more efficient.
You're not going to be able to load rooms up to the same degree. So if you miss on a couple guys that you thought were going to be X, Y, and Z within 2 years, then you're going to have to go backfill some of those rooms. I mean, the offensive line is a really good example of this, right? You were hoping to have a healthy Teddy Prohaska and kind of know what you were getting from him at this point in his career.
Yeah.
That hasn't been the case. Not really any fault of his own. It's not like you missed on him. When we've seen him, he's been good, has been healthy. So you have to backfill and try and go get an Elijah Pritchett to fill a spot at tackle, right? You have some guys that maybe aren't quite ready in the middle of the line where you need another guard. You go and you get Rocco Spindler from Notre Dame because you're like, I like these guys. I like this room. I kind of want one more year to develop them. I kind of want one more year to get their bodies right.
Hold that thought. Shane.
Did you find the cut?
Find Williams.
Okay.
Clip 3.
Got it.
It's a lot of young talent on this roster. They've done a really good job recruiting over the last few years. When you got guys that are big, you got guys that are fast. And I know I heard Coach Terry talking about the fundamentals of things. That's something that we're really, really harping on, and development of players and teaching guys how to play football. But I do think we have a good core of guys that we can develop.
Listen, one more time, Shane, for those in the back.
It's a lot of young talent on this roster. They've done a really good job recruiting over the last few years. When you got guys that are big, you got guys that are fast. And I know I heard Coach Terry talking about the fundamentals of things. That's something that we're really, really harping on, and development of players and teaching guys how to play football. But I do think we have a good core of guys that we can develop.
Do you think they're moving? That's unsolicited. Because the question was, what have you noticed?
Yeah. And his answer was basically, we got a good young core of guys we can develop.
How many times did he use the D word? You always got to give him the D. How many times did he use it?
At least twice.
Okay. I think, again, I'd like to reiterate, I think we jumped the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we jumped the gun.
I think there's a lot of.
There is no real philosophical shift.
I would agree.
I
think there's some practical.
There's the learning the. It's like I always tell you.
There's
right?
some pragmatic
if you want me,
shifting.
if you want me to be a rich, like, I will play any game you want to play.
Yeah, just tell me the rules.
I just want to know the rules.
And the rules have shifted on him.
I think the rules have shifted.
So his practical approach has had to shift some.
But he's not getting off.
Philosophically,
but he's not going to get off the core.
He's the same person. He's
still playing the long game.
Here's part of the other thing that I think we're maybe missing a little bit.
That's not true, Travis. That's not true. I do like development, though.
I do think there's a thing that we're missing here a little bit is the way college football is today, right? We saw Kurt Signetti come in, bring a bunch of his guys from James Madison, be competitive right away. Is that a roster that would have been competitive without guys that he brought in from his previous stop? Or as competitive? They might have been okay.
Yeah, not really.
But they're a lot different if he's not bringing those guys in.
You
right?
know what I think would be interesting?
What's
You don't
that?
want to do it because it defeats the purpose because you know the answer. We go back and talk to our Indiana guy in Bloomington from when we were at Indian Creek last year.
Mm-hmm.
That interview is eerie.
Yeah.
With how Indiana played out.
Yeah.
Just is. Hey, can those guys work? Hey, this guy's pretty good. Oh, man, I like Surratt. Oh, what about this? Well, if he can get this and the schedule breaks right. Like it's eerie.
I think
if you go back and listen to that.
And I think I asked the question, I go, hey, are a bunch of guys from JMU better than Indiana was last year?
Yeah.
And I wasn't asking it facetiously.
Yep.
That's what I meant.
Yep.
And it turns out they were.
Yep.
Right? Not just better than they were last year, but better than a lot of the rest of the Big Ten, too. And so I look at this and I go, okay, Coach Rule obviously didn't have that advantage because he'd been in the NFL for 3 years.
Yep.
So when you're looking at the roster, the way everybody else has sort of backfilled in the last few years when they've gotten jobs has been by bringing guys. Look at what Lincoln Riley did when he went to USC. How many of those Oklahoma guys and commits came with him? A lot. We forget about Caleb Williams and the whole thing, right? Like there was a lot that happened there. That's not something Coach Rule had. So he's sort of had to adjust on the fly to changing rules and trying to backfill a roster with experience that he wasn't able to bring from his previous stop. I'm sure he would have loved it if he could have brought Christian McCaffrey with him. That would have been great for everybody. That wasn't really on the table. So you go in and you have, okay, so what's the way to backfill a roster in a way when you're not allowed to, or when you don't have guys from a previous stop to bring with you? We're kind of seeing it now. One, he relied on the older guys that were on the roster already. But in year 3, there's a little gap between the guys that were on the roster already aging out and the guys that they've recruited in the first couple of years aging into the roles they need them to be.
Shane, clip 8 from Coach TB talking about development at this level.
Okay, let me get it here.
Yeah, Coach TB, clip 8, development.
Got it.
Well, the biggest difference is this level I'm able to develop more. And I'm talking about a stance when I first got here. Get off the ball, hand placement. When you get a guy that's been in the league for 6 years, they already have those components in their play. So I think that's the bigger difference of development and really the relationship part, being a father figure to them. Sometimes in the NFL, and it happens too in college, but you have a guy for 6 weeks, 4 weeks, and they're gone in the free agency world. So that's really big. I think the biggest difference is true development, which I'm all about.
Shane, the next two are going to come from Coach Ekeler. Coach Ekeler, clip 10.
I saw exactly what we've done for 4 years at the last place I was at. And so if anybody wants to comment on what we did at the last place I was at, it's fairly ignorant because you're not in the weeds. You don't know who we're playing. You don't know all the different dynamics. So for somebody on the outside, that's why no offense, but I don't read anything y'all write because you're not in the weeds. And I don't mean it out of disrespect at all. But you don't know everything that's going on, And so for me to comment on what happened here would be ignorant.
Shane,
I wasn't here.
Shane, clip 11.
In this profession,
I'm just going to build on this.
In life in general, every single day as a human being, as a father, as a journalist, you're getting better or worse. We never stay the same, right? So if you're built to be the best, then you're always constantly looking to improve. Every single day you wake up. And so every day in my life, it's all about continuous improvement.
Shane,
and
follow that up. Lastly, clip 3 from Coach Ekeler.
Think about his path. Think about started off coaching D-line. Then he went linebackers, special teams coordinator. Then he makes, a logical progression. He's a defensive coordinator. Another logical progression, he's a quarterbacks coach. Then he's offensive line coach for the Giants when they won the Super Bowl. Then, who does that?
Maybe I'm hearing what I want to hear, but when I hear him talk about, by he I mean Coach Ekeler, playing young guys and the number of young guys that they played at Tennessee and the natural progression of how to turn and run as a wide receiver as it equates to blocking in space, or to be a young defensive player and to be on one of the special teams units and be ready for the big time, or the follow-up of the natural progression as he talks about somebody that's doesn't seem to be in the same scope of talk with Coach Rule's assent. All that screams to me is development.
Yeah.
The next logical progression to maximize the space. It seems like to me, and listen, I'm going to take some pushback. If you got it, 888-638-4876. Can you get, is there a different way for me to look at it, or am I just hearing what I want to hear?
No, I don't think there is. I don't think we're disagreeing on this. I'm hearing mostly what you're hearing as well. The one thing that's stuck out to me there about young guys playing on special teams is, and maybe this isn't groundbreaking, I guess I've just never really thought of it before, is I generally think of young guys playing on special teams. I'm like, oh, it's a good way to get some young guys onto the field. But I don't really follow that any further with why that matters. And I think yesterday when I'm listening to Ekeler, I sort of landed on, and you can tell me if this is right or not, or how you process it, but I sort of landed on, oh, special teams isn't just good because you actually just get guys on the field and they run around or whatever. It's an opportunity in sort of a limited sample size for guys to execute and make plays so that when they have to go out and be on the field in larger sample sizes, it's not the first time they're experiencing that.
Yep.
And that's not really a connection I'd ever made before.
Well, where did the young guys that played in the secondary in the bowl game first start?
On special teams.
Playing special teams.
And I understood that progression just sort of, oh, well, you start on special teams, it's a more limited role, and then you maybe get to play. But I never really thought of it as, hey, you get used to making plays and executing.
Why do you think he didn't just acquiesce to the Marshall question about punt returners?
Sure, because he wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity. And I don't think he knows yet.
And he didn't know. He
doesn't know yet.
He didn't know enough.
Yeah.
Right. So the more I hear those things, the more I'm convinced.
Because if you're not a developmental program, you just be like, oh, we brought this guy in to be our punt returner. He's our punt returner, right? You don't go, hey, there's 6, 7 guys knocking on my door want to return punts. We're going to see who can return punts. Like, that's the difference. If you're just a program that's going to go fill holes through the portal and you're not going to develop anybody, then you're going to go out and you're going to be, hey, that guy's my punt returner. We're going to go get him. This guy's my left guard. I'm going to go get him. This guy's my right tackle. I'm going to go get him. You don't still play out the competitions.
Listen, 2 good questions back to back that kind of fit.
Yeah.
Okay, KP says, hey, DB and Ravi, when the first staff got here, when Rule was hired, do you believe that they were more focused on winning games than developing the players? I feel it was winning games. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Now, I like Lee's perspective because he's kind of the contrarian with how we've looked at 105.
Yeah.
Oh, you're already vibing?
Yeah.
Okay. Because Lee then says, if you go from 150 to 105, you have more time to spend developing those you have. We tend to look at it as a negative.
Yeah.
So now that, to KP's question, that you have fewer guys in the third year, do you think the emphasis has changed or it's just more concentrated?
I think it's just more focused. Because here's what Lee's talking about.
That's funny. Those things came back to back.
Here's what Lee's talking about, right? It's like if you're, and I don't really know anything about guns, so this is a weird metaphor, but let's say you're not a very good shot. You may want a shotgun because you get a spread, right? You're going to take a lot of shots at it. You're going to get
like buck as opposed to.
Yeah, like you're going to get a shotgun spread, right? As far as you're going to have lots of chance to hit something because it's not a real concentrated bullet path, right?
Okay.
You got a kind of a scatter shot. Whereas if you're a sniper, you're going to get one shot, but you're going to be dialed, right? That's the difference between the 150 and the 105 to me. 150, you're taking a lot of bites of the apple, right? You're giving yourself a lot of opportunities with a lot of different guys to say, oh, maybe this guy will make it, maybe this guy will make it, maybe this guy will make it. With the 105, it's a little more concentrated. You're going to laser focus in on the guys that you think you can develop. And with the staff that you think is a good teaching staff, that's probably better, right?
As KP asked the first question, I think no.
You don't think they were focused more on winning?
Mm-mm.
I don't either, really. I don't know if he put the right staff together first.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
Like, he could have missed a little and still be trying to do the same thing.
So I think if there was a mistake made, it was not guys necessarily cutting their teeth, but it was you had guys that hadn't had success on the field with guys that hadn't had proven success off the field. So it was kind of a weird blend.
Strange balance.
They both were learning on the fly.
Yeah. Where now you've got a Holgerson, you've got a Phil Snow, you've got an Addison Williams who's been a defensive
That's kind of what I think.
You've got a John Butler who's been a high-level NFL coach.
Because you know what?
What's that? You got Mike Ekeler, who's been one of the best special teams coaches in the game.
Yes or no?
Okay.
This for our listeners too. Could you see Dana Holgerson coaching Heinrich Harburg and Jeff Sims in year one?
No.
It doesn't seem like that would fit, right?
No.
So, and
if Dana Holgerson
I think timing matters.
Sure.
But to KP's question,
well,
some of it I think was kind of a victim of circumstance.
How so?
Because I think if you're not used to winning and you don't have proven guys, you have to focus on what you're good at.
Sure.
And maybe you're not afforded the luxury to fast forward to winning. Sometimes you just have to get your mind right before you can go to battle. You know what I mean?
I will say,
and I know that probably drove fans crazy.
The one thing I will say about Ken that I think is worth bringing up, I do think there was a part of Coach Rule that understood
how important it was to get the monkey off your back.
That 2-10 in year one wasn't going to fly.
I feel you. I would agree. That's what makes the question tough.
Yeah, it is. It's a real question because the kind of like gut answer is like, no, they're always focused on.
I'll.
There's a part of me.
I'll entertain that.
There's a part of me that thinks Matt Rule understood that 2-10 was not going to fly. At Nebraska
I understand
year
that.
one. Like just hard stop, absolutely not.
And he had said when he first got here, this feels a little more like year two.
And it played out a little bit more like year two. Now, I think we assumed that meant they were ahead of schedule. Maybe he meant that that's how he was going to approach it because he knew they needed to win more than 1 or 2 games the first year at Nebraska.
I got to win.
I will say the other thing.
It's just weird how those came in like back to back.
Boom, boom.
And they,
Yeah, I do think there's also, like, because you asked the question about Holgorsen, right? They probably get somebody other than Jeff Sims if he's the guy.
Yeah, I don't know, though.
Or they would have tried to.
You still have time, right?
Yeah.
You still have time constraints. Again, if I'm not very appealing or people don't like me aesthetically, I can want to date the good-looking girl. She's got to like me, too.
Oh, I'm not saying it would have been a high-profile guy that would have brought in.
You know what I mean? Like she's got to like me, too.
No, I totally understand that. I agree. But if you're Dana Holgorsen, you're coming from the Mike Leach tree, right? That's sort of, and I get their different systems, but there's this extended history of taking pretty underwhelming quarterbacks, but they got what you were trying to do and putting that guy in a position. I'm not saying it would have gone any better. I don't know. But what I am saying is it probably,
like how could Coach Holgorsen not push Cam Ward's buttons? Like that's a thing.
Sure, yeah.
So the blank slate thing is kind of hard.
It is hard. No, I agree.
Because clearly with Cam wanting to redshirt after he had played, something was amiss.
I'm just saying if you're bringing in year
and I'm
one,
going back to Cam at Houston.
If you're bringing in year one Dana Holgorsen, like that's the guy you start with. I just assume they would have gone after somebody with a different skill set. Personally, I don't think it. And again, would it have gone any better? I have no idea. But what I do think is true now is you've got this you brought up the blend of types of coaches on the staff, right?
I think it's paramount.
Because I think Phil Snow, you look at that guy and you go, oh, that's a developmental guy, right? That's a guy that's been with Coach Rule. He knows how this goes. I don't know that I, on first blush, would think of Dana Holgorsen as a developmental guy, but then look at all the guys that we think of with Dana Holgorsen and where they actually came in as recruits.
Yeah.
Like Steve Slayton and Pat White and Stedman Bailey and like those guys.
Stedman Bailey.
You like that?
Wow.
Tank Dell. These weren't guys that were highly recruited.
Yeah.
The only one that he got that was a dude.
And Kobe right on cue.
Yeah, Tank Dell.
I don't got it.
Think
Tavon Austin was still under him.
Good pull.
The only guy that was super highly recruited under Holgorsen, I think it was Holgorsen at this point, was Noel Devine.
Yeah.
That's the only one
who fell in their laps because of what he had been through. Remember Notre Dame was out and Florida State was out.
Yeah, and he had the tie with Dion. He kind of fell in their laps, and for what he was as a recruit, was a little underwhelming.
Yeah,
if we're being honest, like he was good.
No, he was legit.
But for what he was as a recruit
he just happened to be Shane's size.
Yes, he was very tiny. Okay. But you don't like my first blush isn't Dana Holgorsen's a developmental guy, but when you think about how he's won, it's been developmental.
Yeah.
He's never gone out and gotten the best guys. That's not really how he's operated. He's gotten guys that fit really well into what he does. That's the Dana Holgorsen model. It's fit and develop.
I think yesterday was kind of the exclamation point. I had been intimating it. I had been saying it. I think we're off. I think we're saying something different than what he's saying.
Yeah.
Even though, and I was willing to say, now they did. Snow said it. Hey, we had to adjust. Coach Rule said, hey, we had to adjust. But I don't think it meant getting off the plan.
Yes, correct.
I don't. I'm like,
again,
I think we jumped the shark. Right. The reason that we're not talking about the offseason as much in terms of being player specific.
What's that?
It's not because we don't care, and it's not because we don't know the players. Like if you're a fan and you want to know about
Deshaun
McCullough,
Andrew Marshall,
plenty of tape. You want to know about Pritchett? Plenty of tape.
Rocco
Spindler, plenty of tape.
Key.
That's not it.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's lazy, and it's selling the fan base short. Do you know what it really is?
What?
I think number one, the lead horse in moving on and just playing football has come from the staff. Hey, listen, stop hyping guys up.
Yeah.
Let's just get better at football. Stop believing your own hype. Shavers, hey, knock it off. Freshmen, knock it off. Let's just get better. So they've downplayed success.
Well, because we saw that.
They've downplayed hype. They want to. It's not chasing three. It's like just win games. There's no one-loss score jinx. There's no uniform jinx. You know what losing close games is? It just means we're not good enough.
Play better. Play better.
It just means we're not good enough.
Yeah.
So you can see the philosophical shift, like, let's just do us better. Right?
Yeah.
So the players don't give you much because the staff won't allow them to give much.
Yeah.
Hey, get your ass off TikTok, right? You on TikTok? I got a TikTok workout for you.
Yeah.
Like, knock it off.
Yeah.
Okay? So in return, the fans are like, well, the staff is kind of downplaying it. And there's this silent minority in the fan base that's like, oh, here we go, winning the offseason again. Off-season champions. So they're not buying it until they see it.
Yeah.
So they're not all in.
Yeah.
It's not because we don't know or understand the roster. It's because we're guarded on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's wait and see.
Right? Which is okay.
That's fine.
Just means we got to be better at what we do, but it's not for anything fancier than, oh my gosh, there's too much roster turnover. We can't follow it. That's not it. Like there's plenty of people. Like ask some of these guys some questions about personnel. There are guys and gals out here
dialed in
that understand personnel.
Also, I'm going to say
they know a receiver from Cal. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's just they're not going in yet because if there's recency bias. Hey, we heard the same thing about Nair.
Yeah.
We heard the same thing about. Like I don't mind the wait and see approach.
Yeah.
I'm not judging that, but let's not act like the fan base doesn't have the wherewithal to understand what's out there. And it's not because there's some roster shift, because as we've heard with each coach in some form or fashion, they talk core, they talk development, they talk blend, they talk core, they talk blend, they talk development. All of them. This isn't some philosophical flip that we need more ready-made guys because we're panicking. That's not it.
I'll say the same thing.
It's not it.
I'll say the same thing I do almost every time this comes up. Winning the offseason is a hell of a lot better than the alternative.
Yeah.
Doesn't get you any wins in August, September, but it's a lot better than the alternative.
And I don't think the fan base is saying lose the offseason.
No.
I think they're keeping their feelings in check.
Which is fine. Wait and see mode is totally fine.
It's cool.
But don't complain about doing well in the offseason. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Wow.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Live.